Next topic is instruction set architecture. The instruction set architecture deals with the design of giving the meaning of the ones and zeros in our opcode. If we have so many bits in our opcode, we need to tell what bits means what. That is what we do in designing instruction set. And because of the setting that we give in the bits in our opcode, there will be some restriction of what instruction can be put in the instruction set. This means the assembly code that we see in our assembly program is not simply made as the programmer wants, but it actually depends on what the engineer decide the meaning of bits in the machine code or the opcode. And because of that, the kind of addressing mode that is available also will depend on the way we give meaning to our opcode. Later in this chapter, we will see that the way we design our instruction set also will show the differences between RISC and CISC. That is reduced instruction set computing and complex instruction set computing. Deciding the formatting of the bits in the instruction set is done by the engineer who decided, of course. For example, you want your opcode to have 112 bits, then maybe you will set 16 bits for the opcode and the rest of the bits you divide into 3, 32 bits each for destination address of your calculation, 32 for the operand 1 and the operand 2 of your calculation. Or let's say you want your opcode to have 32 bits only, but you still can spare more bits in opcode and still have some control bit because you only spare only 5 bits each for destination, operand 1 and operand 2. This decision is depending on what you want to do in your microprocessor. In designing instruction set, there is a concept we call endianness. It refers to the way we order the bytes that is located in a memory location. If the data or the word size of the data is more than 1 byte. If the data is more than 1 byte, there is a question about which byte of the two will be located in which memory location. There are two ways to do this. One approach is big endian, the other one is little endian. Which one we choose will affect the way we read instruction from memory. The meaning of big endian is that the ending of the data, which means the least significant byte of the data, is stored at higher address. Over here, the small address or the base address is A, and then higher address is A plus 3. So big endian will keep the least significant byte of the data at the higher address. So the end, this one, is at the big address. The opposite is little endian. This means the least significant byte of the data would be kept at lower address or little address. The end or least significant byte will be put at lower address, little address. You can see here the ordering of the same data in the two approach is actually reversed. Over here, 0A is at the top. Over here, 0A is at the bottom. Registers are memory location that is physically or immediately available to the computing system. It is the closest memory that a micro-P can have. In designing our instruction set, we also need to define what register that we can work with because that information, which register, has to be kept in the instruction format. If we have more registers, of course, we need more bits so that we can address the more of them in the instruction body or in the instruction opcode. If the register that we are addressing is general purpose register, we need more bits because we need to specify which register we want to use. But if we have special purpose register that is only used in some certain instruction, we don't have to address it because the address is known from the instruction itself. For example, we may have a register that is having a special purpose for counting, and it is only used in instruction called INCR. Every time we call INCR in our assembly code, we don't have to address this register. Just now we said that the way we design our instruction set will determine what kind of addressing mode that is available in the system. By the way, the meaning of addressing mode is the way we look for our source operator and target operator when doing data manipulation with our microprocessor. The ISA or instruction set architecture that we design needs to be tuned to whatever addressing mode that the system require. There are three basic addressing modes: literal, direct, and indirection. Literal addressing mode is where we hardcode the value of the operand inside the opcode itself. We hardcode the value inside the instruction. And of course, this can be done for source only because target or destination operand will have the result, not the value that we are calculating. For example, if we have assembly code of add b with 5, 5 is the constant value that we want to add to b, we can spare 4 bits to keep this literal or immediate data, which in this case we put 5 in binary is 0101. The other two addressing mode, direct and indirect. For direct, we don't keep the value of the source or target in our instruction. Instead, we tell where to find it. We tell the address of the register or memory location that keep the source, and also the address of the register or the memory location that will keep the result of the calculation. The indirect or pointer addressing add one more step of complication to the system, whereby in our opcode, instead of keeping directly the address of the target or source, we keep the address of the register or memory location that further will tell where to find the source or target operand. In the direct or absolute addressing, we go to the address, we get the value. But in indirect or pointer addressing, we go to the address, we will find where to find the source or target location. It is adding one more hopping step. We can visualize this in a drawing. With direct or absolute addressing mode, we have opcode like this. Let's say that is how we visualize the opcode. There will be a few bits spare to give the address of either register or memory location where we can find the value of our operand 1 or 2, or it might be the destination of our result. So in this case, the bits in the operand will point to this. to get the value that we want. This is absolute. But in indirect or pointer addressing mode, we still have the opcode that is pointing to a register or memory address, but inside there, either the register or the memory address, it is another address that will point to either register if the number of register is large enough, or most likely it is a memory location. So this is where we find our target or the source value. This is pointer. So why do we call it indirect? Because the intermediate step where we get the address of where to read or write data, this is what we call indirection. This is the case if we want to read data from an array or writing data to array. As we said just now, the number of address that we can keep in opcode will determine the kind of instruction or the size of instruction that we can have. And vice versa, if we want our opcode to have certain size, we will be able to perform certain kind of memory addressing. According to the size of opcode, we can have a number of addresses inside it. In this section, we will talk about how many address per instruction that we can have. We can have 3. This is for a large machine code or the large opcode where we can handle up to 3 operand in one instruction. Example, let's say in a higher programming language, we want to do addition of variable A and B and keep in C. This is 1, 2, 3 operand, 3 memory address. In assembly code, this can be written as add A and B and keep in C. The opcode has to be large enough to keep all the 3 operand, the destination operand, operand 1 and operand 2, and the opcode itself to tell what we want to do to the operands. Smaller than that, we can have up to 2 operand in our opcode. We call it 2 address machine. For example, in higher level programming language, we want to add B to A and keep the result in A itself. We can put add B to A. In this case, the opcode can be smaller because it keeps only 2 operand, operand 1 and operand 2, and the destination operand is also operand 1. We can also have one address machine, which can only have one operand in the instruction. In this case, should we need another operand in our calculation, the second operand is assumed to be the accumulator. For example, we want to add D to something. We add it to accumulator. In assembly code, we write add D. The address of accumulator is not kept in the instruction because it is a special purpose register to do accumulation of data. The number of bits in the instruction can be a lot smaller now. We need to keep the opcode itself, of course, and then the operand address of operand 2. We can also have zero address machine. In this case, the calculation is done on a data structure that we call stack. In stack operation, there is no operand is needed except for push and pop. And the machine is called stack machine. We look at one example here. We want to add B to A and keep the result in A. First, we push A, value of A, onto the stack and push the value of B next. So on the stack now, we have two value of A and B. We will have value of A and B being put into stack. And the next instruction in the stack operation is add, which means we add the two top value on the stack. In this case, it's only A and B. So what happened in this instruction is that we will put value of A plus B on the stack. No more A and B. This step, we have value of A and B on the stack. After executing the add stack operation, we get the addition of A and B on the stack. There's no more A and B. And then pop, meaning there's no more value on the stack. So you can see here, our instruction now only needs to keep the opcode, either add or subtract or multiply. Only in the case of push or pop, we need to keep the address of the data. There is also a concept of one-half address machine, where the machine can handle up to 2 operands, but one can be register and the other one can be memory address. This mixing of data target and source is implemented by Intel. For example, we can add a value from memory into register B and keep it in B. So we write add B, D, and D is kept in a square bracket to tell that it is a memory location or a variable. Add into B and keep it in B. The reason why Intel does this is because we can keep less number of bits to address register address in operand 1, but we can keep more bits to keep the address of data in memory location. Let us consider one example, a more complicated example here. In a separate video, we will do more exercise on this. Let's say we want to do at higher level programming language, multiplication of P and Q and multiplication of R and S and add them together and keep in another variable A. We want to show how this is done if the machine is 3 or 2 or 1 or 0 address machine. In 3 address machine, we are so resourceful. We can put up to 3 address in our instruction. Because of that, the number of instructions that we use is very few. The first one, we want to multiply P and Q and we keep in a temporary variable or temporary address X. That is what we perform here. P multiplied by Q and then R multiplied by S, keep in Y temporary. And then we multiply the two temporary variable and keep the result in A. You may want to put store or load. Over here, you don't have to put load or store because everything is done with respect to memory address. How do we do it in 2 address machine? We can only have 2 address per instruction, which means we will need more instruction. Just now for 3 address machine, we need only 3 instruction. Over here, we need 4 instruction. We multiply Q with P, keep in P. Then we multiply S with R, keep in R. And then we take other one, put in a separate address. For example, we put P, which actually now containing multiplication of P and Q. We copy the content of P into a location A, and then the location R just now already having value of R multiplied by S, we add it to this new location to get the calculation that we wanted just now. One address machine, we can only handle one address per instruction, which means we need more instruction. First, we load P into accumulator. Then we multiply the location Q with the content in accumulator, which is P right now, and then still keep it in accumulator. So accumulator now is keeping P multiplied by Q. And then because we want to do another multiplication, we need to keep the content of accumulator, let's say into the address P again. Then we have to load R into the accumulator. The reason why we keep the previous value in accumulator into P because we don't want it to be overwritten with this load. After this load, we multiply the content in accumulator with the value at S. Next, we want to do the addition of the two multiplication. Optionally, we can store the result of multiplication between R and S just now back to R. Then we look from the memory equation of P again where we keep the multiplication of P and Q. Then on top of that value, we add the multiplication of S and R which is in R just now. But since we know that addition is commutative, this step of storing the multiplication of S and R back to R and reloading of multiplication between P and Q are actually not necessary. We can straight after doing the multiplication add the content at R. We will get the same thing. In exam or test, if you can figure out this kind of optimization, there will be some credit for you. And then after all the operations, we can store back the value of the whole operation to another location, maybe at A. Zero address machine. This is what we call stack operation. You can visualize this operation as the operation of pushing and popping data from the stack. And let me remind that the process of stack operation does not involve any register in the macro P, including accumulator. Let us perform that multiplication of P and Q and then add with multiplication of R and S with this zero address machine. First, we want to multiply P and Q. So we push P on top of the stack. Then we push Q next as the top element on the stack. Then we perform operation of mul. You see mul here does not have any operand because in stack operation it is known that any operator we put on top of the stack will perform the operation to the top portion of the stack. In this case, multiplication will use two operand, which is the two element at the top of the stack. In this case is Q and P. So both of them will be taken out from the stack. Then will be replaced by the value of P multiplied by Q. Then the next operation we need to do is to perform the multiplication between R and S. So we push R on top of the stack now. Next we push S. And the next is to put the operation of mul. Now the two top element on the stack is S and R. So the mul operation will perform multiplication between these two top operand. It will not involve P and Q or the multiplication, which means these two will be popped out from the stack and then will be replaced by multiplication of R and S. At this point, the two operand that we require for the next operation, which is the addition, is already on the top of the stack. So we do not need to do anything. We just issue out or put the operation on top of the stack. Then it will pop out top element on the stack and then perform the addition operation. And as we all know already, the two top element on the stack is PQ and RS. So it is actually what we want to do in our expression. So the final result would be then at the top of the stack. So this is zero address machine doing operation on a stack data structure.